The inclusion criteria for the program is PTSD, depression, anxiety, substance use disorders, disordered eating, grief, and adjustment disorders, burnout. And so these are often conditions that are very poorly treated in our medicine, and some of our biggest frustrations for treating. And in this program, what we see is in fact very strong outcomes. We published in the Frontiers of Psychiatry, which we can put that link in the chat for people to see our outcomes around PTSD, depression, and anxiety. But I think some of the other things to really focus on in the program is really focus on, like I said earlier, creating community, creating connection, creating relationships, and for those who have a history of trauma, creating security and trust, and using psychotherapeutic methodologies that bring forward compassion and compassionate witnessing and unconditional positive regard. So really fostering a space where people can show up, be held, be seen, and do their healing in this container. I think we'll get to some of the other things, as Todd is our head therapist in the program, so he has much to share with this. But I think one of the most impressive parts of this program is the two-eyed seeing approach, and I'd like to hand that over to Elder Geraldine.
Thank you. When we talk about the two-eyed seeing approach, we walk in two worlds. I always revert back to my dear Auntie Ellen, and when we walk in two worlds, it's like seeing two things in different ways. The indigenous ways of understanding wellness, and then understanding wellness in the non-indigenous way. In my concept, when I first came to Roots to Thrive, I sat there and amongst everybody else, and looked around the circle. Why am I here? What do I have to offer? Knowing these individuals that in the same room as I carried such expertise around health, medicine. And here I carried knowledge of a different sense, indigenous, how we uplift someone that's struggling, that they're walking with no spirit, that we call, that their spirit is outside their body. And the old people say, that person needs help. You can see the spirit is not there. We have to help him or her. See him, yeah, we do. And then we would take that individual, begin working in a sense how Roots to Thrive helps an individual. First, the spirituals would talk with that individual. First, to trust, to bring that trust to word, understanding what that means, understanding what Sali means, your inner spirit, your pilot light. Understanding when we talk about that pilot light within, it's not flickering. We need to find out why. Take all those layers off very gently and look at it. Look at the spirit within, they call it. See, and the old man would say, he has no tears. We must bring him up to the mountain and introduce him to the forest, to the plants, to the water. Gently revert him back to his culture. And his culture is the forest, the land. And that is the two-eyed seeing approach, where it's not working with medicine, it's working with the land itself and what's around it. Cleansing and with the water, with the plants, such as the salal, the cedar boughs, And beginning gently early morning, disciplining the mind, learning how to do the mind to the heart, clearing all the obstacles along the way. And then gently having that trust built back in so he can walk on his journey or her to walk on her journey. It's similar to when an individual comes to Roots to Thrive to begin their journey. That is the two-eyed seeing approach. Haspect. Back to you, Pam. Todd.
Thank you so much, Elder Geraldine and Pam, for that description, the overview of our work. Just really wanting to highlight some pieces around why two-eyed seeing, what we can see as a community and in our work. There's one of the differences that we're seeing in incorporating Elder Geraldine's knowledge and her ancestors' knowledge and other ways of two-eyed seeing, that what we see in Roots to Thrive is a partnership, a true partnership between Indigenous ways of knowing and biomedical model ways of knowing that continues to be very fruitful for our participants. We have experiences throughout multiple cohorts where we're just finishing our 7th cohort of participants right now, where of 5 groups of 8 participants. And consistently across the cohorts, we have people who attend who are on a healing path and have not been exposed to Indigenous ways of knowing. And much of these stories and this knowledge is new to them, and are learning how to apply this knowledge to their own healing process. So this shows in action that two-eyed seeing in the case of Roots to Thrive is not about tokenism, but it's actually quite practical in that it enhances the therapeutic healing trajectory of the people we serve. If anyone has any questions so far as we go, please pop them in the chat box or in the Q&A in the WOVA piece. Thanks, Pam. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I'm delayed, so I apologize if I'm talking over you. I think one of the other things that I think is really important for us to bring up is the fact that in this program, we are in constant quality improvement. So we are constantly iterating to a higher level. And we, unlike a lot of things that we do in medicine, in this program, we fully listen to the patients.
Mm-hmm.
We fully listen to their feedback. Are we in service to you? Are we helping you? What would you prefer? And the Roots to Thrive program, if we can make that change in favor of service to the patients and their healing journey and their wellness, then we put it in immediately. So it's immediately iterative, which is unlike a lot of things in medicine where if I make a suggestion at the hospital of something I'd like to change, it goes into the ether and I have no idea what happens to it. Here we hold ourselves accountable to that. We do constant quality improvement and we lean in on that and go, how can we do this even better? Or when we make a mistake or we don't show up as fully as we'd like to, either as a team or for the patients, we lean into that and go, how do we make this better? How do we make this a better program so that our patients get better faster? And we're part of that, trauma-informed care and cultural sensitivity. So we're always learning. Like we never feel as a team that we're done or that we know it all. It's lifelong learning. It's actually a real deep commitment to the lifelong learning. And this is really important in the biomedical model because so often there's this what we call the health gap, right? Of the time when we know something works and then the time that it actually gets into the system is 17 years. Whereas in Roots to Thrive, at most it's 3 months. And because of that, there's a couple of things. Not only do the patients get a better program and get a better service to their healing, but the team feels empowered, feels like they make a difference. And this is in a time right now of epic burnout and epic moral injury to frontline healthcare workers. This is the antidote that you can make a difference. And so I think that's a really important part to take away from this program as well, is not only do we get results like 92% curative at 12 weeks for PTSD. But we have a team that also feels like they can make a difference.
Mhm.
So as you were both speaking, something that's standing out for me in the conversation is really there's a uniqueness to what Roots to Thrive is doing, primarily not only in how feedback is collected and integrated, but the fact that we're operating through a group model. Where most of our psychedelic assisted therapy models across the planet right now are primarily based on an individual therapy, talk therapy model. I mean, this is in relation to regulated models. There have been plenty non-regulated, underground, traditional group-based healing modalities happening for generations and generations. But as far as the research-based, evidence-based, regulated models, especially in North America, what we're doing is very rare. And I'm wondering if Pam or Elder Geraldine would like to speak to it at all, how they see the group model enhancing the outcomes for participants over what an individual model might for some.
Okay, I think, are you nodding at me, Geraldine? Okay, well, I think what's really interesting is our team is exquisitely experienced, and all of us have had the opportunity, I think, to work in the one-on-one and dyad model, and that's a very clinical trial studyable model. And but I would never go back as a clinician to that. Now that I have witnessed and seen over and over the accelerated healing that participants get when they get connected to community, when they get connected to others who have traveled this similar path. And when you're in a group and you recognize that other people in that group carry the same shame or hurt or traumas that you do, then you realize you're not alone and you can lean into that, because so often these diagnoses are so isolating and withdrawing. And what you need more than anything than isolation is community and people that can love you and accept you regardless of what you're experiencing. And our, I think if we go back in all of our lineages, we didn't really do much one-on-one or on alone. We would do it in community, our rites of passage, naming ceremonies, learning. I can't speak for all cultures, but I know in my lineage that nothing was done in isolation. It was always done in community. The other part too that is also adds to this answer is our participants. We've had a number of participants in our psilocybin arm whose first psilocybin journey was one-on-one with a therapist. Their second one was, our third one was with us in the group. And I had an opportunity to interview those folks and ask them what they thought. And every single one of them said, as much as I really had a good therapeutic alliance with my therapist, if I had to choose, I would always choose the group. It was so much more healing. It gave me way more of what I needed. It was so good to be with others traveling the same path I was. And so again, if we really want to honor and listen to our patients, then we need to listen to the patients. And I think they're speaking quite strongly.
And just as Pam was talking about one-on-one versus a group, I can only imagine years ago when as a community in healing in the lodges and longhouses, when families went in and supported those on their journey of healing, it was a group. It was several of them in the longhouse on the same journey of healing. And when they went to the mountain, it was the same 6 or 7 of them had to go up on a journey, and they stayed with it throughout the winter. They stayed together and survived that journey. And it's not only the winter, it was the 4 years that they stayed together and became stronger as that individual grew from whatever struggles they were having. And through the ketamine, through the groups, when they first joined it, and they were, is this real? Is this real? Because they seen the love, they seen the trust, they seen the community embracing it, that they, in the beginning, they weren't certain, but after the third, they were so relaxed, content, and trusting of their journey that they were going forward within. And they were so happy to be part of their group. So yeah, I've seen the difference in the growth of those individuals.
Todd, I think you should comment on it too, because you have the opportunity to do both.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Pam. I have so many stories that I just love to share, so many anecdotes. What I've had the privilege of witnessing as a facilitator for Roots to Thrive over the last 2 years has been nothing short of profound. Coming from 25 years of traditional talk-based psychotherapy and some group therapy as well, primarily in the substance use and trauma fields, I've never seen change outcomes as profound as what I'm seeing within this work. And there are a number of factors that I could name, and there are several that we've learned to accept. We don't really know all the mechanisms of action and change in this process, and we can accept that. So I do believe that something that is unique to the Roots to Thrive model in comparison to many others is that the therapeutic process begins at point of first contact. Even our intake team, our patient navigators, patient participant navigators are really working and upholding the values of unconditional positive regard and really hold a high level of therapeutic allegiance to this model and believe in it. And that really comes through to participants as they're coming through from an early intake. So I can speak to the earlier cohorts where sometimes it would take 2, 3, 4 community of practice evening group sessions before we really started to hear those deeper dives of the work that people were prepared to engage in. And I can say the last 3, 4 cohorts, that has changed significantly, where we're seeing on the first, or we're seeing sometimes on the second evening, people really being vulnerable, authentic, taking risks to this group of ultimately complete strangers to name their wounds and how they want to work on healing them. That is nothing short of profound, that piece in particular. And I do believe that has to do with the intake process. I do believe that has to do with 2 other accelerants, I would say, to the therapeutic process. So one of it is just being in a group and being witnessed and trusting. But it's about how the facilitator's role differ. There's a significant paradigm shift between how these facilitators, our facilitators in Roots to Thrive, are engaging in the group therapeutic process versus traditional talk therapy. So a key is most of the majority of our facilitators, myself included, have been through the program as a participant on a healing journey, and their role, my role as a therapeutic, as a facilitator, is also to role model my own healing process, to show that I believe in this model, I feel safe in this model, and I need to role model reasonable, safe authenticity in that. So that's one piece that we get consistent feedback from participants on, that makes a big difference. So early in the process, facilitators always share first when we're in our small groups. The other piece is this knowledge that they are all about to embark on something very unique. I lightheartedly use the example, if anyone's watched the series on HBO, Band of Brothers, and now the 101st Airborne, and how those soldiers form a deep, deep bond right off the bat because they're aware they're about to embark in something extraordinary. What starts to come through with our participants early on is a bond and a connection amongst each other starts to form because of that acknowledgement that they are going through something novel and extraordinary together. I'd say the majority of our participants haven't had experiences with psychedelic medicines. So here they are, many of them about to embark on their first experience. They have 4 to 5 weeks to prepare, and then they're coming into ceremony in a group with people, and they're having typically a pretty significant, what we would call, a significant psychedelic dose of ketamine or psilocybin for some, and that knowing that they're embarking on this thing together really seems to accelerate the therapeutic process. I think I covered a little bit of the group stuff there. So I'm wondering, while we're sort of potentially transitioning in between topics, I'll just encourage, if there's anyone listening or watching, joining us, whether it's through WOVA or through Zoom, you could, if you have any questions or comments, you can put them in the Zoom chat box or in the Q&A box in WOVA. We'd love to get you guys engaged in any curiosity. Or if there's something that's sticking for you, that any of the ideas we've presented so far are challenging, we'd love to hear it. That's important for us to hear.
While you wait for those, I'll just also add, I think what's really important as a researcher is that Roots to Thrive also has a pretty strong research team. We have 10 people on our research team. And what's I think really important about this is so much of our research is done in the academic setting, but most of our mental health care is done in the community. And it's programs like this, that will be the future of communities. Mental health care happens with clinical counselors, with spiritual care, with our elders, in all sorts of ways that can't be captured in a clinical trial or in an academic setting or a psychiatry ward, etc. Although those are all great therapies, but the reality is our most mental health care happens in the community. And so one of our goals is to publish a lot on our research, and so that others can duplicate what we're doing in this model and not be scared of it. You know, we need family doctors, we need nurse practitioners, we need nurses, social workers engaging in this kind of work. And that's one of our hopes, is that as we publish on our process, as we publish on our quality improvement, as we publish on our outcomes, that this will strengthen the confidence of those in other communities across Canada to engage in innovative methodologies that are going to make a big difference for your patients when done well.
Yeah, thank you, Pam. Definitely a strong research team, and the collaboration between Vancouver Island University and the Roots to Thrive Society for Psychedelic Therapy is a pretty unique and well-established relationship already at this point. So we have a question here from Marcia. She says, wow, thank you for sharing this information. So interesting to hear about your focus on the team/community aspect. And the question is, how do you think other more individual focused programs can learn from Roots to Thrive? So I'll take a crack at part of the answer anyways. So I've had the privilege of training and certifying through MAPS USA as well, and really seeing there are far more similarities than there are differences in many aspects of that model in particular. So when we look at the learnings, I do believe a great deal of it is affirming. People are doing good work, really good, profound work across models. One thing we do learn, there's a few, but one of the pieces that stands out is sometimes we do learn on very rare occasion, when a participant has started in the group process, that they might not be ready for group work, that being ready to expose oneself and showing up and practicing authenticity can be really challenging for people. So not everyone is a good fit to launch right into the group model. Mind you, the majority of our applicants are. Another piece, which I believe is consistent with many practitioners that are operating, say, within the MAPS clinical trial model, but not everyone, is that we've learned the value of resiliency-based skill development. So whether that's EFT or breath work and these kinds of things that really lend themselves to the psychedelic experience. So what we call the pillars of strength. What are your pillars of strength? What are the mantras? What are the practices that you can tap into if you're entering into a phase of the medicine journey that is exceptionally challenging for you, that can help work you through this? And part of what I believe we're doing quite well is we're learning from each other as we go. So other participants get to witness each other learning how to and struggle often through these tools. Like I've been tapping for 6 weeks and it's finally just starting to stick, for example, would be a nice example of that. There was another piece that I'm trying to remember.
Before you go to that, I want to just add on to what Todd said, is that one thing that I love about this program, and one thing that we when as a physician, because I get to work with other disciplines, my learning is ongoing. I get to watch how other people navigate this on our team and navigate problems. I don't have all the answers. No, I will never have all the answers. But being on an interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary team, I am in lifelong learning. And if it's a day of a ketamine session and I'm not on my game, I know that my team's got it and I can sit and be quiet and the team will have it and I will learn from them. And we all want to be better. Like I firmly believe that everyone goes into these disciplines because they want to be the best. And how do you know if you're accelerating and moving up unless you're with other people? If you're in a silo, it's hard to know. If you're a counselor or if I'm doing therapy, it's maybe hard for me to know if I'm not seeing that person anymore because they're better, or just they just said I'm done with Pam. I don't want to work with her anymore. She's no good. Right. And so we don't often get that feedback. Whereas when you work in this group container, you are always learning. And I think you're always upping your game. And I just love my team, this whole team, because I get to learn all the time. And that is just so important for our development and for our academic curiosity and our self-growth curiosity, our lifelong learning. And so that's what I would say for the question around individuals. Get on teams. You should be part of professional accountability and consult teams anyways. But could you imagine if you're doing individual care and you're doing group work? Like to me, I think it's exciting, and I've never felt more nourished as an MD than when I've been on this team and have the opportunity to learn from someone.
Thanks, Pam. The last piece that I'm going to add around what we can learn, what more individual programs, focus programs can learn from Roots to Thrive, is the value of group-based integration sessions. We are watching absolutely beautiful, incredible integration work. As soon as the medicine sessions are done, there's an initial round of integration sharing work that happens before folks close and leave. And also the way that the integration sessions are offered. There are 3 integration sessions, Zoom sessions offered at post-CAT session weekends, and participants can join one or all 3, and they are a mix of participants from across our group. And what happens there is providing that space for participants to share their experience of a non-ordinary state of consciousness has proven to be deeply valuable within the context of community, where folks often don't feel that they have a connection to a community, that people understand their experiences enough. So think about coming to a family dinner table where the majority of folks have never experienced a mind-altering experience like this, an altered state of consciousness, and you start to get barraged with questions, for example, around a pretty vulnerable, potentially tender experience and that kind of questioning. So folks feel that the group processing makes a big difference. And of course, there are many opportunities for group integration, not just through Roots to Thrive, where that people can sign up through, including, I believe there's some connections to the Canadian Psychedelic Association for some group integration work. So Joe also asks, do you believe you will have government support and funding to expand this type of programming to other communities?
Well, I can talk about our program the results are so great that we have some great partnerships that have gone. We have some partnerships with First Nations Health Authority, the BC Nurses Union, BC Firefighters Union. WorkSafe has funded a few folks to come through our program, some first responders. Other provinces, WorkSafe, have funded people to come through our program. And we also have one of our research projects is actually crunching the numbers on our program. So our research team is looking at this. And we know that if a participant, based on like comparison to the BC population data numbers, that if a participant only has a diagnosis of depression, which is pretty rare in our program, most people also have PTSD, anxiety, some may have suicidal ideation, grief, eating disorders, substance use challenges. But if they came into our program and their only challenge was depression, our program saves the healthcare system $30,000. So if you compound those other diagnoses in, it's logical that this program saves the healthcare system an extraordinary amount of money. Every firefighter that is off work for PTSD is anywhere between $60,000 to $120,000 cost to the taxpayer. So if we have a firefighter go through our program and cure their PTSD and they go back to work, that is a multi-year savings of hundreds of thousands of dollars. We know from the MAPS MDMA data around PTSD that at a minimum, it's a $30,000 savings to the system for everyone that goes through MAPS MDMA. So when their diagnoses go away, we save the system a lot of money. But even if, we care more about the person and getting them back to their life and their family and their friends. But either way, you win. And so if we really want to be saving money, then this is something that government will want to support. And it would be very easy to support a pilot, and cover the cost of it and then crunch the numbers. So it's a huge cost savings. And we know that insurance companies won't cover things that aren't cost savings, and they're covering it. So when you look at private industry starting to cover this stuff, we know it's a cost savings. So I think it's worth it.
So that sounds to me like there is a belief that different government agencies, especially in British Columbia, will be expanding their support, especially when we consider the outcomes of the dollars that have already been invested, the amount of nurses that have been supported to come through that have either stayed at work or gone back to work at a time where there's staffing crisis is in our healthcare system. Right there, that's a very obvious win for sure. And our participants that have been sponsored through First Nations Health Authority, I believe the number is every single one either stayed at work or went back to work. There wasn't a single one that at the end of the program remained off work in First Nations Health Authority of those sponsored seats. So there's from the bean counting perspective, pretty significant outcomes. From the human healing perspective, we can't put a dollar on it. And understanding that's something that we need to do in this culture, for sure. I am looking at the chat box and we don't have any other questions popping up yet. So I'll quickly prompt it back to Dr. Pam or Elder Geraldine to see if there's anything else you'd like to speak to or share in regards to Roots to Thrive.
I think through the conversations that we have around Roots to Thrive and how widespread the interest has come to this program, I think it's really important to say that all the participants that have come forward, whether they were Indigenous or not, how it uplifted each one and how those participants have returned back to their work or back into the family that they were struggling. I'm just so in awe when we come and gather, like Pam said, we as a team, we meet and we go over everything and we think about, are we missing anything? Can we do anything better? We go over every little topic. Or when we do our small groups, we talk about things, about what we need to do to uplift anything. And I'm just in awe with this team. I'm there to give the input around Indigenous ways of knowing. And, my title is just that knowledge keeper of who I am. And here I'm sitting with doctors, psychologists, psychiatrists, MDs, and people who work with medicine. And here's Geraldine. I work with medicine, but in a different sense, medicinal medicine, with plant medicines, and understanding the importance of what they're used for, and how it helps people with pain, and how I work with from life to death, and how that weaves in with Roots to Thrive, and how we uplift people who are struggling here on campus with our students. And I am ever so blessed to be part of this team, and right from the Phil site and to Roots to Thrive. And I thank each one that has come forward to listen to our chat and ask the questions. And thank you.
Hi, Elder Geraldine. I want to speak to something you spoke to. I'm going to name it, and we have pieces here. I've worked for large healthcare organizations across my career and nonprofits. And as someone of mixed heritage, I tend to have a sensitivity at times to tokenism in particular, which I've seen in healthcare systems, big organizations, and it's often quite painful for me and my brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles. And what I see in Roots to Thrive is Elder Geraldine, and not just Elder Geraldine. I think it's unfair to just say Elder Geraldine, but the teaching of Elder Geraldine's ancestors are held at an equal, if not higher regard than the academic teachings that are in our circle. And what we see, and the reason this is, as I mentioned earlier, is because of the implications and the support of the outcomes. This is proof in the work that Indigenous ways of knowing have a place at the table in modern healing modalities and will enhance it. We hear it from our participants over and over again, from folks across with different walks of lives. And this is a big difference here. This is not tokenism, this is partnership, this is collaboration in a different way. We have a very unique collaboration as well with Snuneymuxw First Nation, where we are currently hosting our medicine work, our ketamine and psilocybin sessions at Snuneymuxw Health Center. And we have a significant numbers of community members that have been coming through and accessing our program. And we've learned some really interesting pieces. Where the first time, in the first cohort where we had Snuneymuxw community members come through, they came through in their own small group, their own breakout group. And what we've learned from other members was that the healing can happen in community across cultures. And so now the Snuneymuxw community members, when they come into our program, are dispersed just like anyone else amongst the different groups. And that has been enhancing everyone else's experiences. I've witnessed a man speaking in circle after taking weeks of not really sharing a whole lot, after a medicine session, openly sharing about the impacts of residential school on himself, his family, and his community in a strong, confident, honest way that deeply impacted all of our participants. And that is something to be honored and share deep gratitude for. That doesn't happen without the safety of this community. That's what I wanted to say about that.
Well, it's also, thanks, Todd, and thanks, Geraldine, so much. And it just really speaks to why we went into these areas, right? We didn't go into them to be siloed or to be, so many of us in medicine, I think most of us in medicine actually had no idea that medicine was how we would be forced to go into these systems that were absolutely not the way we thought we would be able to show up for our patients. And I think I feel so privileged right now to be on a team that is returning back to, I think, what we really thought we would be doing, and can co-create that in a really nourishing way. Like I said earlier, it's the most nourished I've ever felt as a doctor. that I can show up as a full person, not just as my hat as a doctor, but I can show up as Pam also and travel this route and not be any more important than anyone else on the team, which is nice. And for me, you know, I'm so used to our way of being in the program that it actually quite shocks me a lot when I have to interact in other ways where there's this very strong hierarchy and there's this very strong, almost classist in medicine, and it's overwhelmingly white. You know, and it's shocking, and I'm glad that it is shocking in a way, because it tells me we're changing. It tells me that Roots to Thrive is so different, and I really do envision that this will be the way of the future, because the doors at Roots are wide open for people to join and to come in that door, and the team at Roots is heart opened to learn. To we honestly all, even with all our faults, with all the ways we mess up, we honestly all want to be better people. And what a better way to be able to do that than to walk with other people that want to be better people. And there's a one saying, I wish I knew who said it, but like, we're all trying to be better humans so that we can be better to other humans. And you know, so I'm glad for the contrast I see, and I really do hope that people that are disillusioned with how they're having to work in their places take a look at this model. And we often hear that in our program from a lot of people that are professionals that come through our program, how immediately they take the skill set they have in our program out into their families, to around the dinner table, to around the boardroom. I've heard that so many times, even just randomly out in the community, when somebody finds out I'm affiliated with, that I work with Roots to Thrive. Oh yeah, I know somebody who's gone through your program, and now because of them, we do a human check-in at our meetings. We get to know each other first before we dive into the meeting. And that's the ripple effect of doing good work, of doing something that is truly what we want. This is what we want. We want to show up as full human beings and bring the best of ourselves, and also not get beaten up if we fall down, if we make a mistake. Have people that are there that'll say, hey, that's shitty. Here's my hand. Let me help you. Like Geraldine, let's lift each other up. And we need this more than any time. We're losing healthcare professionals, and they're good people. And what a better way than if they can work in a system that nourishes them. And we have to be the best of ourselves if we're ever going to be in service to patients and clients in this world. So.
Thanks for naming that, Pam. Danielle shared a comment in the chat box I'd like to share. So thanks for bringing that up, Pamela, and to your team for leading by such a beautiful example. I work at a First Nation run health center in Whitehorse and know the true value for everyone in walking with instead of the age-old power dynamics of medicine. So what we're working on sounds very familiar to many folks and hopeful. I'm watching our time, and we've got about 8 minutes left in the schedule, if I'm tracking correctly. And I just want to put it out there one more time to anyone who's out there on WOVA or Zoom. If you have any questions or comments, you can put it in the Zoom meeting chat or the Q&A box in the WOVA interface here. Give someone a moment to type it. So while I'll put this in two places. So rootstothrive.com. If anyone has any other questions or curiosities.
Todd, can you jump in? I'm going to ask you, do you want to talk? So you've been doing this for a very long time. And what would be your advice to others out there that are maybe newer in their career and traveling this path? Psychedelic medicines are coming back. They're going to be a medicine in the system. They're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
What would be your advice to others out there, others hoping to do teams like this?
Thanks, Pam. The first thing that comes to mind, because I've been asked this question a few times. So something that becomes really clear working with psychedelic medicine and sitting alongside other folks in this medicine, there's a lot of interpersonal neurobiology at play. So our nervous systems, our bodies are interacting in many, many ways that can be actually quite tender, quite heart-opening, quite impactful. And this work can, and most often will, show us our wounds that require some tending. And in order to remain present for the people we serve, I believe it is imperative to continually do your own work, your own analysis, your own healing work, your own internal work, whether you're doing it in groups or with an individual therapist. I believe it goes side by side. And as we move forward, when we look at bringing people onto our team and we're growing our team, that is one of the primary pieces we look at. If we see someone that isn't doing their work, they're not going to be a fit for our team. And if someone on our team isn't doing their work, we'll gently connect with them in regards to that and encourage them to do that. All the other technical stuff can be learned. You can learn all about drug interactions. You can learn all about these different kinds of neurobiological processes. When you're in the room with someone who's experiencing a profound experience, that knowledge isn't going to help you. The knowledge that is going to help you in that room is how do you take it in, see it, ground yourself, so you're there as a grounding rod and not a lightning rod for the people in the room. Hope that answered your question, Pam.
And Elder Geraldine, question for you. So other folks out there are going to be thinking about weaving programs together and being better in service. What would be your advice?
I think as an Indigenous person would weave the programs together, such as ours, to think about life itself, to think about the individuals that are struggling or needs just a little bit of support, that their pillars may be just kind of wobbly or just needs a little bit of stableness. And how would you help? How would you help those pillars be a little bit stable? How would you make sure their pilot light is flickering, full of energy? To use the breathing technique, to use the simple things in life to make them grounded. Talking with them, walking with them, sharing story with them, reflecting with them. Finding a story that puts a smile on them, just even if it's just for a moment. And taking that time, not having to wear a watch or carrying a cell phone, but being with the individual one-on-one. I'm here. Learning that for the individual just to learn how to trust within. Go within, Auntie Ellen would say, go within first. To weave it. Connect with the individual as that individual would do. That way the individual that needs those pillars just to be grounded a little bit more so it wouldn't be wobbly. The pilot light to flicker a little bit more. Energy within the spirit. All these things that Indigenous people do. Two-eyed seeing, walking together as one. That's what I would say. Right, Scott?
Hi, Elder Geraldine. And on that note, I'm wondering if there's any closing remarks that you'd like to share, Pam, before we say goodbye to our participants.
The only thing I think of is I don't have the wisdom of Elder Geraldine, so I would kind of like to go mic drop after Elder Geraldine. But like I'll just like some resources. So Todd's put in Roots to Thrive, which is the website of the program, the nonprofit program. We turned it into a nonprofit on purpose so that we could just put every extra dollar into scholarships until this gets covered by the system. It has to be covered by the system at some point. It can't be a have and have not situation where if you have money, you can get this kind of therapy. And if you don't have money, too bad. That's not the way we operate. And so in the meantime, until we can get this in the system, which we're working very hard to get it funded, this is how it works. The other thing I would just put a little plug out to is that we do recognize that there'll be a lot of people out there that want to add this to their toolbox, psychedelic-assisted therapy. And so many people on the Roots to Thrive team worked very hard to create a program, including Elder Geraldine at Vancouver Island University, the postgraduate certificate in psychedelic-assisted therapy. So it's actually first full-year program in Canada offering training in psychedelic-assisted therapy with academic credentials. So that is another way. And like I said, the third prong of the program is research. We recognize that policymakers need research to back up their funding decisions. So we're working hard to publish, and I really encourage those in communities that are doing innovative things that are in service to your community, publish on your data as well if you can. It makes a big difference. We've had our data has been quoted widely across North America and has actually helped other programs in the US get funded that are doing stuff similar to us. So it matters what you do. So that's what I have to add.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pam Kryskow and Elder Geraldine Manson. It's been an absolute pleasure to spend this hour with you on this panel. And again, one more time, if anyone on the call has any questions or curiosities, please visit rootstothrive.com. We have a pretty full website there. Thank you all.